guys, it's Jason here again. I've just been playing through this amp here, which is a 100 watt Dirty Shirley clone, actually, right? Built by a very good friend of mine, Kurt. It's in with me at the moment to wire in one of these, and this is our little high voltage FET Boost, right? So you can think of this as like putting an extra gain stage in front of the amp. I have featured this board in one of my previous videos where I actually wired one of these into my own Dirty Shirley clone, actually, although my Dirty Shirley clone is a simple, measly 40 watt amp, just like the original. Kurt, of course, being the 100 watt guy that he is, has built a 100 watt version of the Dirty Shirley. This is a beast of an amp. I've actually got it running into, like I normally do in the studio here, into the reactive load, into the Axe FX at the moment, because now that I've got the Axe 3 here, it's kind of central to my setup. But in this clip, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to wire one of these in. Alright, so we'll do a step-by-step guide. We'll take it out to the bench, bring it back in here, and we'll run through a few tones with the booster on. What we were listening to, just as I was playing in the intro there, was the amp stock, right? So this is kind of a before, and then we'll have a listen to how the thing sounds with the booster on. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so here we are back in the studio. Got the amp off the bench. I've completed, obviously, the install of the FET Boost, but also the switching. So now I've got a front panel toggle, MIDI toggle on the front of the amp. I've got the amp dialed in the same as it was before we took it to the bench and commenced surgery on the thing. So this is kind of the stock tone. And now let's put the boost in. And off. And let's try it with a more modern guitar. This is a Sir model. Alright, so I'm out on the bench here. It's a pretty warm summer's evening here in Melbourne, so I've got the door open. So forgive the background noise, but I do prefer the natural light in here rather than shutting it up. So a couple of things to note here.
This is the first time I've looked at this amp, and I'm going to have to congratulate Kurt on his workmanship. This is very, very tidy build, so well done to him. This is not one of our Headfirst PCBs, right? So he would have sourced this from overseas somewhere. I think the guy that designed this is based in London. This is kind of a, Friedman style project board. I do notice that Kurt's got one of my Headfirst zero loss effects loop in here, the Metro, obviously the Metro style loop, so that's cool. So what I think we're going to do is the LND boost, I'll probably try and mount it up against this this wall of the chassis here. I've got plenty of room at this other end, but I obviously want to keep the LND boost at the preamp end of the chassis, so you don't have to run any long cable runs. So I will do a test fit now and see if we can make that work. I think I can make it work in the wall of the chassis here. It's a very tight fit. This main PCB, unfortunately, has actually been positioned a long way, towards this end of the chassis, not leaving a lot of room here at all. But basically, this is not wide in. Obviously, I've just got it in there. There's just enough room to have this up sitting off the standoffs, off the wall of the chassis here, and not be touching this board. So this is what we're going to do. Let's do it. Okay guys, well here's the wall of the chassis. This is on the outside, obviously. This is my FET Boost board. Now, before you fill this with components, if you order one of these, right, you're going to put it in your amp. Don't populate it initially, because it makes for a really good drill template. Right? If you need to drill through the wall of the chassis, which we're going to do here, to mount standoffs for the PCB, this is your perfect template. You can obviously make one. You could get something sturdy and thin, and you could make a drill template off the back of this. But why not use it to mark out your drill holes before you populate it? Obviously, if you populate it, you still can do that, but that's a tip. Alright guys, I'm working on the boost board. It's about ready to go in, right? So I've got the standoffs screwed on here. I marked out the holes on the wall of the chassis using the board as a template, right, to mark them out. Hole punched them, screwed them through, so that'll fit in the inside. And obviously before I screw it in here, I want to basically pre-wire as much as possible, right? So I've got my B plus line here, so this is going to be the high voltage line. I've got a ground line with the black. The yellow is going to be for my relay supply. This PCB already has a 12 volt DC supply on it for the relays, right? And it's using 12 volt DC heaters, which is why on my boost board here I don't have this section filled out, right? So this actually allows for a full bridge rectifier, filter cap, voltage regulator, the whole 9 yards here, right? So if you've only got an AC supply, like a low voltage AC supply, 9 volts, 14 volts, something like that, you could actually use this board to rectify it, create a DC supply for your relay here. This is a 12 volt relay on this one, but you could use a 5 volt relay, whatever you've got, right? You might need to add a little transformer to your amp, because I would avoid using the 6.3 volt heaters used for your tubes. You often run into problems there with grounding and so on. Look, it is possible, but if you can avoid it, I'd recommend it. Look, it's in. It does look probably a bit more complicated than it actually is, right? So there are only 3-4 connections you need to make, right, to get this board in. I'll just step through quickly how I've done it in here. So first and foremost, this is going to the B plus line, right? So what I did was I showed the board before I put it in, right? And I've wired all of the the runs that need to go to the board. I wired them in from behind the PCB. So when I mount the PCB in the chassis, there's no wires coming out the front. They're all coming out the back. So this is the B plus line, and it's connecting over here actually, and going through a 22k drop-in resistor. And then the other side of that resistor, we're getting our B plus line, which is powering the FET Boost. Okay. This yellow wire is the 12 volt relay supply. So on this PCB here, and as I mentioned, this is not one of mine, but I've studied this board and I've kind of figured it out. There's a 12 volt tap here, the front of the board, the preamp end here, and so I've just tapped the 12 volt line off there, and I'm running it to the VCC in on the FET Boost board. Okay, there's a black wire here at the back. Can see it on the video there, that one there we go. That is ground, right? So on the FET Boost down the bottom here is a ground pad underneath this relay. So that black wire is running from there, and I've grounded it right on here on the input jack. Okay, just like you would for the cathodes of V1. Okay, now this orange wire here, this is the relay switcher. So this connects to a pad called K1, which is at the top of the board here. This, when grounded, will switch the relay off and on. Right, so when it's not grounded, the boost is in, and when you ground the relay and activate the coil, the boost is out, which is kind of default. So I'm going to test this now because I've just done a few readings on here. I'm pretty confident that this is okay. So I'm going to take it back in to the studio, plug it in, and actually listen to my guitar through it. But a quick look on the oscilloscope here, the boost is operational. But obviously I want to kind of tune it. This blue trim pot here is your boost level. I've got it set in the middle. All right, so all the way on, all the way off, and I've got it about halfway, which just by line of sight should be okay. But obviously when we hear it, we'll be able to kind of fine tune that with a small flathead screwdriver. And once we're happy with this, what I'll then do is complete the job by wiring this in so it's foot switchable. This jack here at the back of the amp, Kurt has used, as I said, Kurt built this amp, he's used this as a foot switch for 2 channels, so 2 channel Dirty Shirley. But unlike our double Shirley, which is kind of 2 gains and 2 masters on the same preamp, Kurt did a plexi channel, which is 1 less gain stage, and the normal Dirty Shirley over here is kind of channel 2. So what I'll do is I'll replace this with a stereo clef jack. And just to talk about switching control of the relay, okay, so there's a K1 pad up on the top of the board here. This grounds the relay, okay? So you've got a 12 volt supply going onto the board, that's the VCC pad, and you've got a K1 pad here. When you ground that K1 pad, you activate the coil in the relay, right? So the way we've got that set up is via a foot switch on the back of the amp, and also a mini toggle on the front, which I'll show in a second. But just in terms of the foot switch, this was a mono jack just for channel switching, so I've replaced this with stereo. So the tip is still the channel switching, and now the sleeve of the or the ring, sorry, of the TRS 1/4 inch jack will switch the boost in and out, right? So these are clef jacks. So switching, the way that you do it is you run from the relay K1 pad, you run into this side of the jack, right? And then from the other side, you run that to the toggle switch at the front. And the reason you do that is so that when there's no foot switch plugged in, when there's no jack plugged in, you get a connection across the jack here, which enables the toggle on the front. And when you plug a 1/4 inch jack into here, it breaks the circuit there and disables the toggle on the front, leaving the foot switch in complete control of what's going on. Okay, and just moving to the front of the amp, this is the new mini toggle that I've put on. So the center lug is grounded, right? So I'm running that across to a ground point, that's the same ground point that was already used in the amp for the channel switching. And then on this side of the switch, it's a simple 2-position. Okay. This side of the switch here runs back underneath the main board and to the side of the 1/4-inch jack that we were just looking at. And just one final detail, guys, I haven't covered the actual guitar signal line, right? So just in reference to this photo here, just coming off the input jack, the bottom left of the picture, you'll see two 68k resistors coming together. So from there, this is the guitar input and the actually the low input of the amp wired together. But just from that point, I'm running a shielded coax straight onto the in pad on the board, and there's a ground pad right next to that. So that shielded coax is grounded at the boost PCB end, and right next to it you'll see a white coax coming off the bottom of the relay there and kind of heading off to the left. That actually ducks under the main PCB and goes to the grid on V1A. So that white coax was the existing coax in the amp before I modded it, right? So that white coax connected to the two 68k resistors on the input jack. So effectively put the FET Boost board in between the input jack and the grid on V1A, the first gain stage.